Please don't come to your dad's birthday. That's the text I woke up to. No greeting. No emoji. Just those 7 words glowing on my cracked phone screen like they were announcing the weather. And if that wasn't enough, 5 minutes later, my brother chimed in. Nobody wants you there anyway. No anger. No guilt. Just a passive-aggressive RSVP denial from the people who raised me. I didn't even reply. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't scream. I just stood there in my tiny kitchen staring at the microwave as it hummed through the last 30 seconds of yesterday's leftover noodles. The machine beeped loud and final, like it was trying to pull me back into my body. I set my phone down gently beside the sink. My hands moved. My mind didn't. A small, ridiculous part of me still cared. That was the worst part. After everything, years of being the second-class kid, the backup plan, the financial cushion, I still cared. I tapped the screen again just to make sure I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't. I called her. It rang twice before my mom picked up. Her voice came sharp and already irritated, like I'd interrupted something important. Which, to be fair, I had my brother's self-congratulatory prep session for his big networking party, also known as Dad's birthday. What now, Rachel? I didn't even know what I wanted to say. Maybe I wanted her to take it back. Maybe I just needed to hear it from her mouth. Not a text. My voice sounded smaller than I expected. Weak. Why would you say that? Why am I not welcome? There was a pause. Then a long sigh. The kind she uses when I ask something she doesn't want to answer. Listen, there are important people coming tonight. It's just we don't want to complicate things. Before I could ask what that even meant, I heard my brother Liam laughing in the background. You're still working at that diner, right? Imagine someone recognizing you. God, how embarrassing. That was the moment it cracked. Yes, I still worked evenings at a diner. No, not because I was lazy or unambitious. I had a real job, one with benefits and a future. But someone had to keep paying mom and dad's utilities. Someone had to make the mortgage payments during dad's entrepreneurial phase, which mostly involved failed real estate gambles and pyramid schemes. And that someone had been me. I stared out the window. The sun was setting. Gold bleeding into orange, I gripped the edge of the counter. Got it, I said, not loud, not angry, just done. I hung up before they could make it worse. Then, methodically, I opened my banking app. I canceled the auto payments for their house, their credit cards, their car insurance. I wasn't even on half the bills, but I had been the one paying them for years. Every click felt like slicing a string. I hadn't even realized had wrapped around my throat. When the last one was gone, I felt its space air. I went to the closet, found an old box. Wrapped it in bright blue paper, the expensive kind. Taped a card to the top in handwriting. I made sure it was neat but impersonal. For Dad. Please open at the party. No name, no hint, just curiosity bait. The street was packed. When I drove up, valet service champagne flutes already in hand, I parked across the street and waited until no one was looking. Then walked up, placed the box carefully on the doorstep, rang the bell once, and walked away. Back in my car, I waited. Not for them. For me. I watched people laugh and pose for photos through their massive windows. Watched my parents smile like they hadn't just sliced me out of their lives with surgical precision. A strange calm settled over me. Like the part of me that had always hoped they'd change had finally stopped hoping. Then my phone buzzed. The call ID lit up, Dad. I didn't want to answer. I really didn't. But I did. You're not my daughter anymore, he growled into the phone. You've ruined everything. In the background, I heard chaos. Glass breaking, my mom yelling at people to leave, guests murmuring as if they'd just been told the Titanic was actually sinking. The line went dead. I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear. No tears, no rage, just silence. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I didn't feel small. I felt free. I wish I could say that call was the final nail, that after Dad's little meltdown, they left me alone. But we both know that's not how these things work. They didn't get quiet. They got louder. Texts, calls, voicemails, so long I didn't even listen to them all. First came the accusations. How could you do this to your family? This is jealousy, Rachel. That's all this is. You've always resented Liam's success. Success. The word echoed in my head like a joke with a cruel punchline. Let me tell you a story about my successful brother. It was a Friday night. I'd just wrapped a double shift at the diner. My feet were aching. My back screamed and my uniform smelled like grease and cheap vodka martinis. I was about 5 seconds away from crashing into bed when my phone rang. Unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again. Then again. I answered the 4th time mostly out of spite. Hi. Are you Liam's sister? A nervous male voice asked. Who's asking? Look. I don't know him well, but he's here at Club Atrium super drunk. He listed you as his emergency contact. Of course he did. I showed up. 30 minutes later. Club Atrium had a velvet rope, 4 bouncers, and a smell like cologne tequila. And desperation. I found Liam slumped on a white leather couch halfway through a loud argument with a potted plant. I thanked the guy who called me, apologized to security, and somehow managed to haul Liam's dead weight into my car. He kept mumbling nonsense, giggling between words like a cartoon villain. Sis, he slurred, you're the real MVP, really. I mean it, you don't even know. What don't I know? I asked mostly to keep myself from falling asleep at the wheel. I dropped out months ago, screw college. I just tell them I need money for books and they send it, boom. I almost crashed the car? Wait, you what? College is a scam. Rach hedge funds, Wall Street, dad's dreams, not mine, I'm out. When we got to his apartment, his fully furnished, fully funded luxury apartment, I tucked him onto his overpriced leather couch. I should have left. But something told me to look. His phone had slipped between the cushions, still unlocked? Maybe I shouldn't have, but I did. Group chats, videos, messages, proof. Liam doing keg stands in yachts he didn't own, bragging about conning our parents. Voice messages of him laughing, saying things like, they actually believe I'm top of my class. I send them fake emails, they eat it up, idiots. Even if I make it big, I'm not giving them a dime. I'm out the second I can dip to Bali. I forwarded everything to myself, every file, every smug little laugh. Then I saw the official letter from the university buried under takeout boxes and unopened mail. Academic dismissal. Effective 3 months ago, no appeal. I stood there frozen. For years, I'd sacrificed weekends, skipped doctor visits, passed up vacations, and emptied my savings to keep the house afloat for them. And they were investing everything in a boy who couldn't pass intro to econ. You know the most insulting part? They knew I worked 2 jobs. Knew I was drowning, and they still sent him money like he was the second coming of Warren Buffett. I left his apartment without waking him. I didn't say a word. Instead, I started planning, because if I had to be the villain in their story, might as well give them a plot twist. You ever watch a lie unravel in real time? Let me paint the picture for you. The night of Dad's party, everyone was there. Business partners, investment buddies, a hedge fund exec. My mom had been bragging about for weeks. Dad was in rare form handing out top-shelf scotch like it grew on trees. Mom floated around like she was hosting a gala, not a birthday party. And then someone noticed the box, my box, wrapped in a flawless cobalt blue. A tiny card on top. For Dad, please open at the party. Apparently, some guests thought it was a video montage or some heartfelt tribute. A few even told Mom how sweet it was. She must really love her dad, one said. The irony. They plugged the flash drive into the living room TV. Soft music started, childhood photos at first. Family Christmases. BBQs, me holding Liam as a toddler. Dad smiling like he knew how to be a parent. Then it changed. Emails, screenshots, voice messages, the university withdrawal notice with an official seal. Then the kicker videos of Liam drunk high, bragging about scamming his way through the last year. Laughter turned to whispers. Whispers to gasps. Then chaos. Dad tried to yank the flash drive from the TV. Mom stood frozen. Someone spilled red wine all over the carpet. That hedge fund exec. Gone before the 3rd clip played. And Liam. Oh? Liam decided to double down. Still drunk, still proud. He stood up and said loud and clear, I never wanted any of this. This was your dream, not mine. I just played along until I couldn't anymore. I'm not your retirement plan, never was. Then he bowed. A sloppy, mocking bow, and walked out. Mic drop. Back in my car. I watched from a distance. I didn't need to see the aftermath to know what happened. I heard it later from Mrs. Patel next door, who despite claiming to mind her business could write a dissertation on neighborhood gossip. It was like a soap opera, she whispered. People left with their mouths open. Your dad smashed a wine glass. Your mom kept saying it had to be fake like it was a prank, but you could tell it broke something. She paused dramatically. You didn't hear it from me, but I think the bank's been calling them a lot. I nodded. Thanks, Mrs. P. Anytime, sweetheart. And for what it's worth. Good for you. At first I thought maybe they'd just go quiet. Maybe they'd let the silence hang long enough for it to mean something. They didn't. Within hours of the party meltdown, I had voicemails waiting for me. Not apologies, just blame. You've ruined our reputation. You humiliated your family. You're jealous of your brother and it shows. I laughed, quietly bitterly. Because how do you explain to people that you're not jealous of the golden child when you were the one keeping the lights on while he was blackout drunk in a penthouse? They didn't want explanations. They wanted a scapegoat. So I didn't respond. I just watched their messages pile up. Angry first, then desperate. Rachel, please, we're family. You don't know what kind of damage this caused. We need your help to fix this. Fix this. They didn't want truth, they wanted cover, and I wasn't their fire extinguisher anymore. The real panic hit when the money ran dry. Without Liam's fictional hedge fund career on the horizon, and without me quietly funneling half my paycheck into their bills, the reality hit them hard, like gravity returning to people who thought they could float forever. It started small. Mom texted me asking if I could help with a quick bill. Then a few days later, a much longer message from Dad, long enough that I knew he was spiraling. Your mother's upset. We're behind on the mortgage, just a rough patch. A rough patch that lasted 15 years. Then came the utilities. Then the credit cards. Then, according to Mrs. Patel, the HOA started fining them because the lawn looked like the set of a zombie movie. Dead grass, rotting pumpkins. The whole haunted vibe. It would have been funny if it wasn't so sad. Meanwhile, I was breathing for the first time in years. With no bills from their address draining my account, I was suddenly solvent. Stable. I paid off one of my credit cards, I quit the diner. I even bought myself real groceries like berries that weren't frozen and almond milk that didn't expire in a week. I slept. Not like survival sleep, but real sleep. Restful, dream-filled. And still, I didn't reach out. Every now and then, I'd get a voicemail from Mom. Her voice always started firm, then broke by the end. This isn't like you, Rachel. You're better than this. I used to believe that. That being better meant always forgiving, always showing up, always cleaning up the mess. But maybe being better just meant being done. Fall came quickly that year. Trees shedding color like confessions. Kids on bikes. Scarves in wind. The world kept moving. But Liam didn't. Last I heard, he was working at a bar in Portland. Living in a shared house with 2 DJs and a girl who made jewelry out of recycled glass. Finding himself, someone said. Good for him. I had no interest in following his path. Instead, I started building mine. For real this time, not for them. Not in hopes that one day they'd finally look at me and say, we're proud. No. I went to therapy weekly. Quietly. No confetti. Just healing. I got promoted at work. A real promotion, not a title bump. With no raise, my boss noticed what I'd been doing for years. She gave me a team a raise respect. And on one oddly warm November afternoon, I ran into my parents at a grocery store. I didn't even see them at first. I was debating hummus flavors. Then I heard Mom's voice behind me. Rachel. I turned. She looked tired. Not old, just drained, like life had finally caught up with her. Dad was with her wearing the same jacket he used to call his power suit coat. It looked too big on him now. We stared at each other like strangers who used to know one another in a different life. We've been trying to reach you, Mom said quietly. I know, I replied. There was a beat of silence. Then Dad Ever the Charmer jumped in. We lost the house. His voice cracked. We didn't want to tell you like this. I didn't know what to say. What was the right response when the people who once cut you out were now asking to be let back in? We're staying in a small place across town. Mom added, her voice lower now. It's temporary. It wasn't temporary. We all knew that. We were hoping, she trailed off. Hoping I'd fix it. She looked away. Dad did too. No, she said, but it sounded like a lie even to her. I'm not angry, I said, and I meant it. But I'm also not coming back. And I walked away. No slam, no insult. Just me and my hummus and 1,000 pounds of history left behind in aisle 4. That Christmas was the first one I spent alone and genuinely enjoyed. I put up a small tree, watched snow fall through the window, made hot chocolate with way too many marshmallows, opened a gift I bought for myself and didn't pretend to be surprised. I lit a candle for the girl I used to be, the one who would have cried over that party invite, the one who would have begged to be included. She was gone, and I missed her a little, but I was grateful she'd left. Sometimes we don't grow, we shed. The new year arrived quiet and cold. I stood on my tiny balcony, a glass of cheap champagne in one hand, watching fireworks flash like electric veins across the sky. I didn't make any resolutions that year. No promises to lose weight, to be nicer, to try harder. I made one vow and it was simple. Stay free, stay kind, stay gone. Because walking away wasn't revenge. It was rebirth. You'd think after a public crash like theirs, they'd learn to sit with silence, reflect, maybe even apologize. But instead, they regrouped. By spring, the messages shifted again. Less anger, less blame, more pleading. Rachel, we know we made mistakes. Families go through hard times. We can get through this. Liam's gone, but we still have you. That last one made me laugh out loud. Still have me. Like I was a leftover, a plan B, the spare key in a drawer they forgot about until they got locked out. No, I wasn't anyone's backup plan anymore. But the kicker. They didn't want me, they wanted rescue. Same as always. They'd lost. The house were drowning in unpaid bills, and the only financial lifeline they ever really had, the one they took for granted for over a decade, was no longer interested in being their safety net. And that terrified them. I never responded. But they didn't stop. A handwritten letter showed up in my mailbox one day. Sloppy penmanship. My father's, probably. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. What could it say that I hadn't already heard 100 times through guilt-laced voicemails and too late apologies? We need you. We're sorry. Help us fix this. But none of those ever came with accountability. None of them said, we were wrong. None of them said, you deserved better. They showed up once that summer. It was a Wednesday. I remember because I'd just gotten home from work, kicked my shoes off, and was debating ordering sushi when the knock came. I peeked through the peephole and froze. There they were. My parents standing on my doorstep like time hadn't passed, like everything hadn't shattered already. I didn't open the door. I watched them wait 10 minutes, maybe more. Mom paced a little. Dad sat down on the front step like that made it less desperate. They rang the bell again. I turned off the lights. Eventually they left. That night I did order sushi. Sat by my window with a movie playing quietly in the background and a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. I didn't cry. I didn't second-guess myself. I didn't feel cold or cruel or even sad. I felt nothing. And that was the win. Because the old me would have opened the door, would have offered them tea and taken on the burden again, would have swallowed her own hurt just to make sure everyone else stayed comfortable. But that girl, she was done performing. They tried the extended family next. My Aunt Karen messaged me a week later. Your mom says she doesn't even know where you live anymore. She's devastated. Cool. Don't you think it's time to talk? I typed out a reply, deleted it. Typed another, deleted that too. Then I settled on, I wish I could say this was a surprise, but it's not, I'm fine. Please don't contact me about this again. She didn't reply. Neither did anyone else. And for the first time, my phone was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels like loneliness, the kind that feels like peace. Somewhere around August, I ran into my cousin Julia at a bookstore. We hadn't talked in years. Rachel. I looked up, startled. And she actually smiled. Warm, not pitying. You look good, she said. I heard what happened. Well, the version they told. Oh yeah, what version was that? That you sabotaged Liam's future and abandoned the family. I laughed. Not even bitterly, just genuinely amused. Sounds about right, I said. And you believe them. Not for a second I remember how they treated you. We all did. We just stayed out of it. Silence isn't neutral, I said softly. Her face fell a little. I know I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. But it was honest. And that was more than I'd gotten from the people who raised me. We grabbed coffee after that, talked for hours, and for the first time I let someone in. Someone who didn't want anything from me but truth. That day was a turning point. Because it reminded me that not all family is chosen, but not all blood is betrayal either. Some people are just afraid to speak until the room is already on fire. Fall came again, golden and sharp-edged. I took a solo trip up north. Rented a cabin, turned off my phone. Woke up with the sunrise. Baked bread for no reason. Listened to birds instead of sirens. And one morning I sat at the kitchen table with a pen in hand and wrote myself a letter. Not to them. Not to anyone else. To me, dear Rachel. You did the hard thing. You walked away. You didn't scream. You didn't beg. You didn't let the world shame you into returning to the fire. You didn't set. You survived being the invisible one, and now you're becoming whole again. Keep going. No apologies, no detours, just forward always. I folded the letter, slid it into a book I'd been reading, and left it there. Like a time capsule. A reminder. Winter crept back in with a chill that didn't quite reach me. I'd grown stronger than frostbite, quieter than shame. And then, in early December, a final email came. Subject line, "We miss you." No name, no preamble, just a photo of the three of them. Dad, Mom, and Liam. A cheap selfie in front of a plain apartment complex. All of them smiling like nothing had ever happened. Like they were trying to manifest a reality where we were still whole. There was no message, no ask, just the photo. I stared at it for a long time, and then I deleted it. Not out of rage, not out of spite, but because I knew the truth. They missed the idea of me, not the real me, not the me with boundaries, not the me who stopped giving everything and asking for nothing. And that idea, it was never my responsibility to keep alive. After that last email, I didn't hear from them again for a while. Not a peep, not a letter, not a surprise knock on the door. Just stillness. You'd think that would feel like peace. But silence when you're used to chaos has a strange way of sounding loud. Sometimes I'd check my phone, half expecting a guilt-drenched voicemail or another message from a distant cousin acting like a family diplomat. But there was nothing. Eventually, I stopped checking. Eventually, I stopped wondering. It's funny how quickly you can forget what someone's voice sounds like when all it ever did was cut you down. The new year came and went. I made no resolutions, no promises to anyone but myself. Then one night in February, my phone buzzed around 2 a.m. Blocked number C. At first, I let it ring. But it called again. And again, I finally answered, more annoyed than concerned. But there was no voice, just static, then breathing. And then faintly, my mother's voice, almost like a whisper. "Rachel, please." I hung up. Blocked the number. Not out of hatred, not out of vengeance. Out of peace. Out of the knowledge that every time I gave them space in my life, they turned it into a wound. Around the same time, my job offered me a position in a different city, bigger team, better salary, and most importantly, distance. I didn't even hesitate. Within a month, I was packed and gone. No forwarding address, no goodbyes, just a clean break. The apartment I moved into was nothing fancy, but it was mine. No haunted corners. No history, just hardwood floors, white walls, and possibility. The first night I slept there, I lay on the floor with no furniture, just a blanket and a pizza box beside me. And I cried. Not sad tears, not angry ones. Just release. Because I had nothing left to carry. And for the first time in my adult life, no one expected me to. Spring came late in my new city. The trees took their time blooming like they weren't sure if it was safe yet. I got it. I was the same way, but slowly I let things in. A friend at work invited me to trivia night. I went. Someone from my building offered to help carry my groceries. I let them. A neighbor knocked on my door with fresh muffins and a dog named Peach. I smiled, said thank you, and meant it. Small things. Things I used to dismiss as distractions. Now they felt like a second chance. Then one night as I was folding laundry, my phone pinged. A name I hadn't seen in over a year lit up the screen. Liam. No message, just a friend request. He'd found me on a social media platform I barely used. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I clicked through to his profile. Gone was the frat house aesthetic. No more club photos, no more fake finance. Bro energy. Just a guy who looked tired. Maybe honest. Or maybe just caught. His bio was empty, his timeline sparse. There were a few recent posts. A job at a bar. A blurry photo of a beach with the caption, "Still figuring it out." No mentions of mom. No photos of dad. Just silence between them. I didn't accept the request. But I didn't block him either. I wasn't angry at Liam. Not anymore. He wasn't the problem. He was just the symptom. That summer, I ran into someone who reminded me of myself. She was 19, bussing tables at a coffee shop near my new office. Smart, sharp, fast, with a comeback, but quiet when no one was looking. One afternoon, we got to chatting. She told me about her parents, how they kept pressuring her to drop out and work full-time to help with bills, even though she'd earned a scholarship to a good school. "They say I owe them for raising me, I guess." She laughed nervously. "Do you want to go?" I asked. She nodded. Her eyes welled up. "Then go. You don't owe anyone your future." She smiled at me like I'd said something revolutionary. Maybe I had, because nobody had ever told me that. Not when I stayed, not when I paid, not when I worked myself to the bone so my parents could chase pipe dreams through my brother. It felt good to say it out loud, like I was rewriting something not just for her, but for the girl I used to be. Later that week, I found Liam's message in my inbox. Just 2 lines. "I'm sorry, for everything, I really mean it." And for once, I believed him. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't forgive him, but because forgiveness isn't always a reunion. Sometimes it's just release. Time passed. Fall again. I was sitting at my kitchen table, new place, new candles, same old tea when I realized something strange. I hadn't thought about them all day. Not once. Not the parties I wasn't invited to. Not the sacrifices they erased. Not even the blue box on the doorstep. And in that moment, I knew the story wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. I used to think healing would feel like fireworks. Some dramatic cinematic moment where everything makes sense and the pain dissolves like sugar in tea. It's not like that. Healing, as it turns out, feels more like realizing your shoulders aren't tense anymore. Like noticing you've stopped checking your phone for messages that used to make your stomach drop, like breathing and meaning it. It creeps up slowly like spring, thawing the last patches of frost. You don't even notice at first. My lease was up in October. I'd outgrown the apartment in a good way, so I moved again, this time to a quieter street, a brighter space with more windows and less noise. No ghosts followed. I didn't tell anyone. No need to. I'd learned by then that freedom isn't about escape. It's about choosing who gets access to your life, who earns it, who respects it, and most of all, who doesn't. One afternoon, while unpacking books, I came across something wedged between the pages of an old journal. It was the letter I'd written to myself months earlier in the cabin. Dear Rachel, you did the hard thing. I smiled, reading it. Not because it was profound or poetic, but because it reminded me of a version of myself who was still trying to believe she was allowed to choose herself. I didn't put it back in the book. I pinned it to the fridge, not as a monument, but a reminder. And then came the call I didn't expect. A number I recognized immediately. The nursing home where my grandmother had stayed back before everything imploded. I hadn't spoken to her since before the party. We'd never been particularly close, but she was the only one in the family who hadn't asked for anything, who hadn't picked a side. She was calling now from a new number. I answered. Rachel, dear. Her voice was soft, raspy with age but clear. I heard you moved again. Of course she had. Small towns have long shadows and longer memories. Yeah, I said, just needed a little more sun. So I need some on, she chuckled. Your parents told me you abandoned them. I didn't reply. I told them maybe they abandoned you first. That made my throat tighten. She'd never said anything like that before, never openly acknowledged it. They didn't take it well, she added. But I didn't say it for them. I said it because it's true. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind that doesn't need filling. I'm not calling to drag you back, she continued. I'm just calling to say I see you and I'm proud. I didn't cry, but I did feel something loosen in my chest. Thanks, Grandma. Don't wait too long to visit and don't bring guilt with you when you do. I won't. I meant it. That night, I stood on my balcony and watched the city lights flicker like little beacons of chaos. But my world felt still, not stagnant, still like calm water after a storm. I scrolled through old photos on my phone, not because I missed the past, but because I needed to see how far I'd come. There was one photo from years ago, Liam and I as kids, him with cake on his face. Me beside him smiling with my eyes slightly off camera, like I was already learning how to exist in the edges. I deleted it, not out of bitterness, but because I didn't need it anymore. Some stories don't deserve to take up space on your phone or your heart. A few weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address. I almost threw it out, but curiosity won. It was from my mother. I recognized the handwriting, stiff, formal, and oddly neat, like she thought writing legibly would make up for everything else. I read it once. Then again, there was no apology. No ownership. Just a carefully worded appeal full of phrases like, we were doing our best. You misunderstood our intentions. We still consider you part of this family. Still, as if I had ever been invited to be more than a placeholder. Taped to the bottom of the letter was a photo. The three of them again. Same tired smiles, a living room that looked smaller than I remembered. Scrawled underneath in blue ink, come home. I folded the letter back up, slid it into an envelope, wrote one line in block letters across the front, return to sender. And that was the day I stopped looking back, not out of rage, not out of pride, but because some doors don't close with a slam, some just slowly drift shut. And one day you realize you're standing in an entirely different room with entirely different light, and you don't need the key anymore these days. I'm good. I'm not perfect. I still flinch when someone raises their voice. Still pause before trusting too quickly. Still check my bank balance more often than I need to. But I'm good. I have people who know me, friends who show up. Quiet mornings, loud laughter, inside jokes that aren't survival mechanisms. I have space to grow, and I have myself. Not the version they preferred. The real one? The stubborn, tired, healing woman who stopped waiting to be invited and started building her own table. And guess what? The view from here, it's beautiful story, too. In fact, I was considering it. When someone inquired as to who would be attending my sister's baby shower next, I responded nonchalantly. My mother erupted in laughter. Don't please. In accord? My hubby grinned. I remained silent, simply stood up and walked away. I discovered 57 missed calls when I woke up the following morning. Nina is my name. My age is 35. Are you married? No children? The answer depends on who you ask. Inside my family. That either makes me the wise one who knows better, selfish or unlucky, which version they genuinely believe is unknown to me. Perhaps all of them. Perhaps it varies according on the audience's day. Haley, my younger sister, organizes her pregnancy announcement like a trailer for a movie, matching attire, expertly taken pictures, a caption with strategically positioned fairy lights that reads, "Baby J coming this spring," in looping lettering. Despite being 4 years younger than me, she always seemed to be a step ahead of me, at least in my mother's eyes. Our parents' house hosted the baby shower last Saturday. I arrived early to assist with setup. Of course, I had hand-cut all of the tiny pink signs for the dessert table purchased, ribbon, and hauled the additional table from our garage. It didn't matter if my name wasn't on the invitation. My role in this family has always been to show up with tape and lemon bars. The assistant. The star. Not the center. Only the one who makes up the difference. The audience erupted in cheers when Haley, dressed in a white pregnancy dress and ballerina flats, arrived half an hour late. My mother fussed. As if she were royalty, she pulled out a chair and fluffed a throw cushion behind her back. Since the work evidently involves catering, I continue to rearrange the bottled water in a cooler in the while. Sometimes people refer to me by that name. Have fun, Aunt. The task has always been little. This is not a significant inference. Not the one who has a strategy. Just someone with a moderately worrisomely amusing existence. My husband Mark was looking through his phone in the corner beside the fireplace. I passed him 3 times and he didn't even raise his head. We kind of have that dynamic. Unless I ask him directly, he doesn't intervene, and even then it depends on how I phrase it. When Haley's closest friend Bree clapped her hands and exclaimed, "Okay, one last game," I was standing near the vegetable tray attempting to stop my Spanx from rolling. Who do you think will come next? I ought to have anticipated it. Everyone looked at me. I tried to be casual and natural when I smiled. In fact, I was considering it. I said in a somewhat informal manner. If it landed wrong, there was just enough truth to hurt. And it did. As if I had just cracked the greatest joke of the day, my mother let out a loud, breathless laugh. "Don't, please." She spoke loudly and cheerfully as if she were trying to help me. Haley gave her plastic champagne glass a snort. Bree laughed. Marky grinned. A smile that wouldn't be used to cushion a blow. The type that spoke, "Yes, that makes sense." As though I might have imagined it. I stood there for a moment with my mouth hanging open. No one backpedaled, but perhaps I had misheard. Nobody remarked, "Hey, that's unfair." Guys, hurry up. They simply moved on. Someone made a joke about Haley having twins. First dibs on holding the baby went to someone else. I refrained from crying. I didn't speak louder. The dumb banner that read, "Oh baby," was not knocked down by me in letters of glitter. I simply set down my paper plate, grabbed my bag, and left through the front door. I was not stopped. Nobody even gave me a call. I drove in silence. I had no strategy. I didn't even have a jacket, just keys in my hand and a knot in my throat that wouldn't untangle. I ended up at Dana's. She's a friend I've had since college. She's seen me through breakups, job changes, awkward bangs. When I texted her, "Are you home?" She didn't ask why. She just said, "Come in. I'll leave the door unlocked." She met me in the hallway with a blanket and half a leftover pizza. We sat on her couch in sweatpants watching old sitcoms. She didn't push me to talk. He didn't need to. That night I slept on her pull-out couch under a weighted blanket with her cat curled up near my feet. I woke up to the buzz of my phone vibrating against the floor. 57 missed calls. It from my mom. 6 from Haley. 3 from Bree. The rest, all from Mark. The family group chat was going off too. I didn't even open it. I just stared at the numbers on my screen, one after another like a scroll of names I was supposed to care about, but not one of them said, "I'm sorry." Not one. And that was the moment I realized something I hadn't let myself admit before. This wasn't new. This wasn't a one-time error or an odd joke that fell incorrectly. This was who they were. This was how they saw me. And the only thing that had changed was that this time I didn't remain to be part of the punchline I left. And for the first time, I didn't feel terrible about it. Not quite yet. Anyway, I didn't open any of the missed calls that morning. I just gazed at the list of names all in a nice row like a guest list for a party. I never committed to attend. My mom had texted, "Can we have a conversation?" No apologies? No explanation. Just the typical assumption that I'd be the one to make everything okay. Only 4 words had been supplied by Mark. "Can this be fixed?" I didn't respond. Rather, I drew the cover up to my chin and gazed at Dana's spare room ceiling, which had a faint light in the black stars from the time her niece slept there. It struck me as odd that I had assisted in the installation of those stars years before. And now, here I was like a shattered version of myself, curled up under the same ceiling. I felt nothing, not ruined, not upset, simply empty until the memories began to surface. Not at the baby shower. It was still too crisp, too fresh. Smaller instances began to come back to me. I had shoved those moments to the back of my mind since they weren't important. I learned not to raise a fuss because of this. My aunt used to say, "Nina always finds a way to make everything about her," when I had a nosebleed in 4th grade, or when my mother commented, "Well, it's not like she's got anything else going on." When I made the honor roll in high school, for example, Haley informed our relatives that Nina is the only one who can make gravity feel embarrassed by my stumble on black ice over winter vacation. They all laughed, and as I had nothing better to do, I laughed too. Being part of the joke was simpler than being the target of it. I learned how to survive in my family that way. They ridiculed you. It indicated that you were still included in the group. Silence was the worst, being excluded, being disregarded. So I laughed some more, even if it stings, even if it caused bruising I was unable to explain. That I believe is the reason I married Mark. That morning it struck me as if someone had opened a mental window and suddenly let the truth in. His kindness was not the reason I married him. He seemed familiar. So I married him because he made fun of me in the same manner as my relatives. Because that's what I believed love looked like. And I used to be proud of the truly messed up portion. "He's got your sense of humor," my mother said when I introduced him to my parents. As though that were a compliment, I recall Mark making a joke that evening. I suppose I passed the test of sarcasm. We both chuckled. I experienced a sense of being seen. I had no idea that my tolerance was being assessed. When I entered the kitchen, Dana was preparing eggs. She said nothing, so I must have turned away, just gave me the sugar like it was medicine and poured me coffee. "Are you all right?" "Finally?" she asked. I shook my head. After nodding, "I believe I wed my relatives." He looked at me. "It's not the best, I mean it. The way he treats me, the way they treat me," I remarked. "The dialects are diverse, but the language is the same." She rested her back on the counter. "Have you ever spoken that aloud before?" "No," I said. It wasn't until now that I realized I felt it. I opened my phone while seated at the table to read a fresh note, not to check my texts. I started writing about more than simply the baby shower. And I called it "Why I Left." Sure, it was the trigger, but it wasn't the cause. Years of stuff. One joke at a time, dignity was gradually eroded by accumulation. Thanksgiving 2018. I burn water. Mark informs everyone, 2019. According to Mom, she hopes that any child I have will inherit Mark's brain and her patience. 2020. For her father's birthday, Haley creates a slideshow. Both of the pictures show me with my eyes closed. 2021. During dinner, Mark and my father joke that I'm the challenging one. 2022 game night with the family. Mark imitates my voice while we play charades. Nina is guessed by everyone. 2023. It's my birthday. Mark hands me a card that reads, "At least you're having fun even though you're still not pregnant." All of it had made me giggle. I also put that in writing. I always felt it was better to laugh than to mourn. "You're creating a case file," Dana commented as she passed by and took a quick look at the computer. I suppose I am. She gave a nod. Excellent. You'll require it. My mother contacted me again that afternoon. I didn't answer. I went through our most recent text instead. She once sent me a meme with the caption, "When your eggs are aging, so are your standards." It was a cartoon of a woman sobbing into a wine glass, featured 3 emojis for laughter. No background, I had sent that back at the time. Hey, and polite, she had said, "You know I'm kidding. I adore you." I trusted her. I wasn't sure if I did now. Even though Mark hadn't texted me since I was still looking through our old exchanges to see when the teasing began. Perhaps it had been there all along. It was little things in the beginning. When I tripped over a crack in the sidewalk, he said, "Good thing you're pretty," he exclaimed. "God, you're walking hormone." After I sobbed while watching a commercial, he gave me an A for effort when I bought a new clothing. He asked me why when I told him I wanted to attempt writing a novel. There are enough suffering writers in the world. And he would smile and say, "Calm down, I'm just playing with you," whenever I said something. As a result, I attempted to relax and gradually stopped discussing my victories since they had turned into jokes. I gave up trying new things since they had turned into commodities. I ceased to dream aloud. I simply quit. I wrote, "I used to think love was about finding someone who gets your humor," as my final addition to my message that evening. Finding someone who never makes you feel like the joke is, in my opinion, the key. I knew I couldn't turn back, but I wasn't sure what I would do next. And I wasn't afraid of that notion for the first time in years. It was liberating. I informed Mark that I will stop by to retrieve my belongings. Only a few necessities. Notebooks, laptops, and chargers. He never folded the nice blanket he always borrowed. He just said, "Hey, I'll be here," without asking any questions. There was a porch light on as I parked into the driveway. I was astonished to see how overgrown the grass appeared. Normally, he was obsessed with cutting the edges. I felt better for some reason, as if I wasn't the only one who was losing it. I knocked. But Mark opened the door first. Instead of searching through the wreckage of our marriage, he grinned as if we were picking up dinner. "I'm happy you returned," he remarked. "I never returned." "Oh, I simply came to pack," I said. He moved out of the way. I entered. There was a new air freshener in the home that smelled like takeout, something like fake lavender, making too much of an effort to feel normal. I headed directly to the bedroom. As if he expected I may remain, my duffel bag was already on the bed unzipped. I didn't. "You know," he remarked from the doorway, "you don't have to do this." By it, they meant nothing. "That's the way my mother always laughs. I wasn't referring to your mother." "Folding a sweater," I said. He made another attempt. It's possible that the joke didn't go over well, but everyone was drinking. A party was being held. I raised my head. "It was more than the baby shower, Mark." "It always is," he scowled. "Each and every time." "Would I get the humor from you?" He grinned as if it were a test after opening and closing his mouth. "Hello, I apologize." It was wrong of me to chuckle. "I adore you." "You know that? Do you?" He blinked. "I do, of course." "So why does it seem like I'm trying out for a part 1 every time I already have?" The back of his neck was massaged. "What are you discussing?" After taking my phone off my person, I launched the Notes app. I compiled a list. I began to read a research. Don't be theatrical. Thanksgiving 2018. I don't cook, you informed your cousin. I put together the 2019 New Year's. At your company party, you presented me as your wife who provides emotional support. 2020. Valentine's Day. You're still the strangest female I've ever met according to the card you handed me. Maybe change, but don't ever change. When I looked up, he stopped laughing under his breath. You monitored all of this. I stopped acting as though it was unimportant. I said, he gave a head shake. All of it was amusing. We're exactly like that. You immediately return it. When he failed to respond, I just gazed at him. Instead, he crossed his arms. What the heck? I'm the bad guy now, simply because I don't exaggerate anything. You're not the villain, I said. All you are is the echo. He narrowed his eyes. What the reverberation of all the jokes my relatives spoke about me. I was educated to find that comfortable, so you fit right in. Since I only knew love, I mistakenly believed that taunting was love. Quiet. Then he lowered his voice. None of this was ever spoken by you. Until today, I had no idea what to call it. It buzzed on my phone. I looked at the screen. Haley shared a picture from the baby shower on the group chat I was holding. A paper plate when I stopped smiling. It said in the caption, "Some of us can take a joke at least." I didn't answer and put the phone down. "Is that the point of this?" Mark remarked, pointing to my cell phone. "Some memes, some captions. This has to do with your belief that sarcasm is the only way to relate to me." I said, and I believed that meant I was important. He appeared truly astonished. I reached inside my backpack and took out an envelope. Not too thick. Not definitive. Only the beginning. "What is that?" he inquired. "Separation. Contract." He refused to accept it. "Someone who laughs at my humiliation is not someone I will remain married to." "Mark, I'm not doing it anymore. This is absurd." "No," I said. "The most bizarre stain?" I put the duffel bag over my shoulder and zipped it. I was followed to the front door by Mark. "Now, what are you simply going to be by yourself?" I turned to face him again. I was all ready. My phone buzzed once more as I stepped outside. My mother sent me a message. "We all need to move on, don't we? Haley has hormones. You're too delicate. Everyone is worn out." I took a screenshot of it. Before I drove off, I put it in the folder I called Reasons I Left. For the first time in days, I clicked on the family group chat. I typed, "I'm not overreacting. To be clear, I just finished my performance." I then selected Leave Group. I leased a little one-bedroom apartment with squeaky floorboards and an excessive amount of light the next day. It was mine, even though it wasn't flawless. I was unpacking my books that evening when there was a tap on the door. I scanned the crowd. "Who is my mother?" I didn't open it. Through the door, she called, "I know you're in there, Nina. This is far enough." I partially opened the door. When she spotted me, she gave a tiny gasp. "You appear slender?" "I'm all right. I'm concerned about—" "You are aware. You are preoccupied with looks." She twitched her face. "This family is being torn apart by you." I slightly widened the door. "No, I'm breaking the pattern," I responded. She winced. I waited. "Do you believe that you are now superior to us?" She lost her temper. "No," I said. "I believe I'm now realizing that I'm worthy of better." I shut the door after that. "Don't slam. Simply click inside." I took a seat next to a partially unpacked box on the floor. I refrained from crying. I didn't become angry. I didn't think twice. I simply sat there and took a deep breath. Not everyone will be able to relate to this emotion. However, leaving a shape that you've spent your entire life twisting into something that makes other people laugh is liberating. Despite the first loneliness. Even if it's silent, I had freedom, yet I was alone, and it seemed like a beginning. I left, but Mark didn't immediately respond. Not after the folder. Not after I carefully described every slight and instance of humiliation in public, all disguised as comedy. I should have known better. But I reasoned that perhaps he had finally understood, because I began receiving texts again 2 days later, this time from my mother. "He apologizes. Perhaps you were overly sentimental." He's just like that. "Nina, keep your marriage intact." Above a tone. That was her account of what transpired, as if he hadn't completely embarrassed me in front of her and everyone else in the room. As if it were a lost comma or a misread email. Haley then leaped in. "They couldn't help but try a team effort, I suppose. It was you who made my baby shower more dramatic. We were enjoying ourselves. Nina, you went too far. Just like everyone else, laugh it off. As if I hadn't laughed it off all my life. As they tore me down, I laughed as they made me the joke. I laughed till I lost the ability to recognize the sound of true delight." Haley's message ended with that phrase, "You were once able to handle a joke." I didn't respond. Just to get some fresh air. I put my phone down and went barefoot outdoors into the cold to just feel the breeze against my face. After then, I took a step that completely altered the situation. In the family group chat, I left a message. "You're correct." I laughed once I took it. I once thought that if I could be the easy one, I could be the cool one. The one who didn't draw attention. You could love me as much as you love Haley someday. However, I no longer require that. Your kind of love is not what I need. I'm not in need of your kind of family. I'm finished. I also departed from the organization. My mother phoned not even 5 minutes later. I let the voicemail go. Mark made another attempt and left a lengthy message this time. 4 minutes and 37 seconds of justifications, guilt, and then fear. You're just going to leave me with everything. You don't even give a damn about our promises. You've been theatrical all your life. This breakdown is simply another one. You'll settle down. This line follows. You will prove them correct if you divorce me. My family comes next. His relatives. All those who called it love and laughed at me. I didn't answer. Rather, I moved into a temporary sublet across town after packing up the last items from our house. I approved my lawyer's preparation of the real divorce documents and paid the rent in full up front. They didn't heed the hint. Thus, things got out of hand at that point. Mark arrived outside my building and broke into each unit until he was allowed inside. He was waiting with roses at my door. He murmured, "Nina," as if we were in a depressing film. "Hurry up, you made your argument clear, you created your own tiny setting." "However, this isn't you, I believe it is. You just never bothered to see it," I remarked. He took a step toward her. "That's all." Then, a decade later, "No," I said, "if I had stayed, it would have been a waste of 10 years. He took hold of my arm firmly, but not hard. "I will not allow you to discard this," I retreated. "You're not hearing me." Then I instructed my lawyer to complete the papers as soon as it was legally feasible. When I phoned her that evening, everything was autographed by me. After 2 days, a stack of documents, a single Zoom call, and remote notarization completed. Or so I believed, because my mom chose to give me another chance. She brought a Tupperware of stew and a lecture about the complexity of family when she arrived at my home. "You're overreacting and you'll come to regret it, Inez." One day after giving her space to speak, I offered one question. "If that had been Haley, would you have laughed?" They were making fun of it. She blinked, did not respond. I said, "That's what I thought. Do not return here, please." She went away after leaving the Tupperware on my front step. It wasn't necessary for me. After many weeks, the divorce was formalized. I didn't post anything, I kept it a secret. I felt lighter than I have in years after signing the paperwork and leaving the notary's office into the icy cold. One final email was sent by Mark. "I hope all is well with you." I wasn't, but I didn't respond right away. Not quite. However, I felt as though I was living in my own universe for the first time. After a year, everything had changed. You weren't on an app when I met you, just at a friend's gaming night. Not at work. Eli was his name. He was solid and courteous. He was the type of man who could be heard without having to be the loudest person in the room. At no point did he joke about me. I laughed at him, sure, but never at myself, to never cut me down. He didn't laugh at me, he laughed with me, and it was all I understood. Quietly, we were wedded. Just a courtroom home, 2 rings, and breakfast at a cafe that provided too much coffee and not enough sugar packets. No dramatic guest lists, no major pronouncements. He was flawless. Then I discovered I was expecting this spring. I refrained from crying. I remained calm. I simply sat in the restroom with the test in hand and said, "All right, let's do this." Eli smiled like a child at Christmas when I informed him, and he remarked, "She's going to have your eyes." "How did he know it was a girl?" I asked. He gave a shrug. "I simply do. My family hasn't been informed yet. These days they text people on their birthdays. Maybe twice a year we get to visit one another. Stiff talks and polite visits." Harry continues to believe that I'm just going through a phase. It's okay. They are not yet aware of the baby. I'm not trying to hide it. I just haven't determined if the emotional math is worthwhile. However, I am certain of one thing. My daughter will never question whether or not her dreams are humorous. She will never hear jokes about her concerns. She will not be the scapegoat or the family clown or the overly serious one. She will have a personality. A whole entire intelligent individual. And just as I wish I had been protected, I will protect her. Whether I overreacted or if it simply took me too long to respond at all is still a mystery to me. Anyway, I appreciate your patience, really. Do you believe I made the correct decision? Tell me in the comments below. Please subscribe if you would want to see more tales like this one story, the 3 around my mother's birthday. "I'm proud of all my kids," she replied, lifting her glass. Aside from one. Everyone chuckled. I pulled out a tiny white envelope, dropped it into her champagne glass, and grinned. When she saw what was inside, she let out a scream. The night was doomed from the beginning. Around 6:30, with snow still sticking to my coat, I entered the home while clutching her present as if it were porcelain. A carefully wrapped Italian silk scarf. The entire space had a roasted pork and vanilla scent. Christmas music played somewhere in the background. Cheery, hollow, and totally out of place. On the rack at the entryway were coats, fur. Cashmere creator words that muttered costly. In contrast, mine appeared to be a discovery from a thrift store. The living room was already filled with people. Carol. My mother was sitting in the middle of the sofa wearing a beautiful red dress, her earrings sparkling as if she had just won the title of Queen of the Evening George. My father sat next to her quietly and courteously. At such occasions, this is his default option. Emma, my elder sister, was giggling at Leslie while ogling her flawless manicure. Lucas, my younger brother, got into a heated argument with his relatives over expensive automobiles. Emma looked at me as soon as I went in, chilly and different. She responded, "Oh, you came?" As if I were a pizza delivery. Nobody could recall placing the order. I made an effort to grin. I wouldn't miss it. Of course, I said. Mom simply waved her hand without bothering to get up. Find a seat and place the present over there. We're almost done with dinner. I put the little present box next to the other gifts, which were mostly large, shiny branded shopping bags that looked like they belonged in a window display, and hung up my coat. Although everything had a joyous appearance, there was a sense of emptiness. Not the unexpected sort, the type you become accustomed to when champagne was being distributed around by the servers. I moved to the long table's far end. I was not provided a closer seat by anyone. At that moment, I saw that two enormous framed pictures in matching pricey frames were carefully hung over the fireplace where the old family image had formerly been. Emma was in front of the Eiffel Tower in one of them, wearing a luxury gown that was all white and striking a magazine-esque posture. In the second, Lucas held a plaque that said Startup of the Year, while standing confidently in a slick contemporary workplace. My picture wasn't there. Back when I was still trying to smile, there was an old graduation photo. Just a blank spot, actually, as if I had been silently obliterated. I drank a drink of champagne, turned aside, and remained silent. They served dinner. The cuisine was lavish. Glass dishes, miniature sculpted salads, truffle mashed potatoes, and duck with orange glaze. Everything looked amazing. Tasted like nothing and smelled like cash. The topics of talk were standard success of others in Paris. Emma boasted about her latest collection. Leslie, bless her, went to fan club when Lucas mentioned starting his own coffee shop. Carol, you have such a gifted family. Mom smiled as if she had brought up a king or queen. Nobody asked me a single question. When I sat down, even Dad, who always tries to be impartial, merely nodded. Then they forgot I was there, I once said in a low voice that I had recently moved into a new flat. Mom didn't even try to act concerned. Have you told them about Paris? Emma? As she handed her another glass of champagne, she interrupted me. I turned my attention to my fork and glanced down at my plate. I've always been the background noise in this house furnishings. A flaw in their flawless design? I was well aware of how the evening would conclude by the time the toasts began. Dad cares for the health of the family. And Leslie to the success of our kids. Lucas made a half joke about the weight of being a genius. Let's all laugh. Then Mom got up. The room fell silent. Clinking glasses. Glancing around proudly, she straightened the silk scarf over her shoulder. She said, "I'm proud of my kids." Clear and loud. "We are proud of our bright star, Emma. I'm proud of Lucas. So intelligent and kind." He hesitated to make a point. I didn't breathe. Then she grinned. "All of my kids make me proud. Aside from one." The room echoed with laughter, anxious. A few suppressed giggles were forced. My father grinned into his dish. Emma put her hand over her lips as if she were ashamed. She wasn't smirking. Lucas held out his glass to me. I refrained from crying, didn't shrink or hunch. But at last, like a door that had been waiting for years to close something inside of me, softly snapped shut. I got up, retrieved the envelope from my handbag, walked toward Mom. The table already held her drink. She wasn't even trying to look. I carefully raised it and inserted the envelope into the flute's bottom. Through the glass, a tidy small rectangle is visible. It contained a brief message and a shared disk link. "What is this?" She scowled. I didn't respond. simply smiled a little and moved to the door. Leslie and Nora called after me. "Where are you heading?" I didn't answer. I just picked up my coat and went outdoors. It was already black in the sky. Under the street lamp, the snow drifted in gentle, sluggish flakes that gleamed like strewn diamonds. For the first time in a long time, I felt the cool air when I inhaled deeply. I'm not going to lose my family. I've already been lost. After closing the heavy main door, I entered the chilly corridor. Then I halted. Inside the home, there was such a severe stillness that it seemed to ring in my ears. Your body will naturally hold its breath during that type of quiet, as if the world is preparing for something. I started with one step and then another. My chest resonated a bit too loudly with every step. Then my mother screamed from someplace in the middle of the main room. Not upset, worried, high-pitched. I essentially froze. And I knew. In that moment, the envelope was opened. They witnessed everything. I didn't look back, refrained from running back to clarify. I simply kept moving in the direction of my car, which was parked at the far end of the lengthy driveway. My skin ached from the air. Even though the snow crunched gently under my boots, I felt at ease on the inside, chilly, calm, steady. I turned the key, closed the door, and climbed inside. The engine roared into action like blades, headlights slicing across the snow. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat as I turned onto the deserted street. That gentle, recognizable glow filled the screen as her name appeared. After giving it a quick peek, I put the phone face down. After 3 seconds, there was another buzz, so I tightened my grasp on the steering wheel. Lucas buzz. Then Emma sent the text. "You must give an explanation. How could you harm us like this?" My face was expressionless. Nothing but quiet. I put the phone on quiet, let the vibrations to subside, and continued to drive through the snowfall, all through the night. All the guilt trips they had ever given me, the need to keep silent, to act as a mediator, to extend forgiveness without justification. Because I now comprehended peace was not what they truly desired. There was quiet, and I was no longer providing them with that. I began to consider the beginning of it all. I was the extra from the beginning, the in-between golden children placeholder. The oldest family member is Emma, joy and pride. A star. The youngest is Lucas. Brilliant, endearing, and utterly adored me. The distance between them, the background mom used to comment on how independent you are. So simple. Easy meant invisible. I received a silent nod when I won awards, when I took up residence in my first flat, in the family group chat, a happy face. That's all. When I asked for help, "You have strength, you'll manage." So I managed. Worked, paid. Rent, covered bills I couldn't afford. Sent money to help them out. Even when I was barely scraping by. Quietly. Hoping naively that maybe one day they'd see me, that it would matter. But the truth was different. When Emma had an art show, they bought her gowns that cost more than my rent. When Lucas dropped out of yet another program, Mom took him out for mental health lunches at 5-star restaurants. Me, when I asked for a small loan to get a root canal, Dad sighed and said, "Times are tough. We just can't afford that right now." Meanwhile, they were shopping for Emma's new car. It might have stayed buried if not for one slip. A passing comment from Mrs. Burton. "Such a shame they sold that house near the park. Your grandfather was so proud he left it to you." That stopped me cold. What house left to me? I didn't believe it at first, so I dug. Property records, tax filings, old estate paperwork, city archives, and there was a will clearly naming me as the heir to the house, forged authorization sign behind my back. Bank records showing years of rental income going straight to my parents' accounts. Thousands and thousands of dollars. While I rationed groceries and worried about rent, I sat with it for a long time. Do I tell them? Walk away quietly? Take them to court? But the decision came the night Mom lifted her glass and said, "I'm proud of all my kids except one." And everyone laughed. Emma smirked. Lucas raised his glass at me like it was some kind of inside joke. That's when I knew there would be no apology, no admission, no closure, just them and their story. Where I was the problem, and now driving through the dark, phone buzzing in the seat beside me, I knew one thing for sure. I did the right thing. He shows me safe, and I would never let them choose for me again. I woke up the next morning to silence. The phone had finally stopped buzzing. When I opened my eyes, the screen was lit up like a Christmas tree. 53 missed calls, 27 texts, 11 voice messages. That Emma Lucas, even Aunt Karen, who I hadn't heard from in 10 years, suddenly remembered I existed. I scrolled through the messages with one finger. Some were desperate. "Sweetheart, we can fix this. We're family." Some were threatening. "If you go public with this, you'll destroy all of us." And a few were just plain nasty. Typical. "You've always been ungrateful." I placed the phone down. Didn't answer a single one. By midday, another telegram came in. This time an email from my father. "Short told you to be reasonable. You don't want a war. No one wins." Signed family is everything. His go-to phrase anytime he tried to sweep things under the rug. Later that evening, another message from Mom. "I'm sorry if we hurt you, but since you've plainly found out, maybe we should chat. We're open to negotiating compensation." Compensation? No. Our goal is to put things right. We didn't betray you. We also apologize. Fair recompense, as if I were not their kid but some irate merchant. I ended the email. I shut down my phone. The rumor began 2 days later. An acquaintance from college first contacted me. "According to your mother, you declined the bequest since you were more concerned with your job." Then I got a snapshot from Emma's Facebook from a neighbor. Even the strongest relationships may be destroyed by envy. It's depressing to observe how greed alters individuals. At that point, I became aware that they had started a full-scale campaign. The intention was to just discredit me so that people would already be questioning my side if the truth ever came to light. It was a textbook. Silence me first, then destroy my reputation. Next, pretend to be the victims. So I was in a lawyer's office all day. The next day, Bennett Sharp was her name? No bullshit. In your mid-40s with unblinking eyes. I lay out the paperwork, the tax records, and the will. She didn't recoil, simply nodded. "Your case is really strong legally. You own the house. They have been making money. They weren't allowed to." I paused. "What about the postings? The gossip and the lies?" She scowled. "Unless they result a quantifiable harm, such as a loss of revenue. Although defamation is difficult to establish, we can make a case if they continue. Once a pattern emerges, you'll be shocked at what matters." I gave a nod. I needed her confidence more than anything else. What should I do now? Document everything first, screenshots, communications, emails. Each and every component. Second, maintain formality at all times. Third, no more confidential correspondence. I handle all communication. One thing became evident on the way home: they would not stop. The truth was harmful to them, and I was the traitor who had rejected their narrative in favor of myself, but I no longer felt afraid. I wasn't the Nora of old who swept the dishes in silence while everyone toasted Emma. I was fully aware of my own value and the importance of their family ideals. Now I accessed my laptop that evening, composed a fresh email, including a scanned copy of the will, along with all the necessary paperwork attesting to my legitimate ownership, and forwarded it to my parents, Emma Lucas and Mom. Subject: line official notification of ownership of property. All subsequent correspondence is handled by legal counsel. Not a single emoji. No justifications. Don't beg. Just the facts. One thing they neglected was that they wanted a war. They no longer use me as a background figure. Miss Bennett wrote me a letter, but it was as cold as a snowstorm. Pleasantries 2 pages, and every syllable came as a warning. Everything is late. My parents had been collecting rent on the property for years, while forging my signature behind my back even though the house was legally mine. They had 5 business days to reply, after which we would send the district attorney proof of fraud and bring a civil claim for damages and restitution. Although it was far from finished, it should have felt like a win. This was only the first move. I waited for the sky to fall for the following 3 days. The initial one. Nothing. Nothing but quiet. Don't text in rage, no calls at odd hours. Emma didn't even post a passive-aggressive meme, which was suspicious, to be honest. Then it began. With a seal rather than a boom. My postal slot was filled with a smooth white envelope. It was a rewritten agreement from a law company I had never heard of, with my name in perfect printed serif and no return address. I squinted at the header. Whitmore Law. The letter was kind yet patronizing. I was urged to sign a mutual agreement in order to settle this regrettable dispute in secret and save needless emotional suffering. It made sense, unless you didn't read it. The fine print in exchange for a settlement that wouldn't even cover 2 years' worth of municipal rent, I would give up all claims to the property, give up any legal recourse, and promise never to bring up the subject in public. Oh, and a lifelong non-disclosure agreement would need to be signed by me. Traditional business approach. Pay the issue to stop talking. I had no intention of sending it to Miss Bennett, laughed and threw it on the kitchen counter. Dry, weary, bitter. We can resolve this like adults with different terms, a slightly higher payout and a new clause according to the same white paper and another envelope the following day. In plain English, I would also have to sign a statement rescinding any previous accusations of defamation regarding the Hale family's financial practices. They wanted me to claim that I was lying. The envelopes were now stored in a drawer. Most of them were not read by me. I simply observed the pile expanding. Then I saw the vehicle. It arrived on Thursday, but the car with tinted windows parked across the street from my apartment could have been any number of things: a delivery man, a neighbor, or a random vehicle. On Friday and Saturday, however, it was present once more. Lights off, engine silent, same model, same location. I began checking the locks twice, then 3 times, and just as I was beginning to believe that perhaps I was just having hallucinations, I realized that perhaps the stress was getting to me. A knock on the door was heard. The time was 9:47 p.m. I looked through the peephole. 2 suit-clad men, one standing and the other holding a clipboard. His hands were in his coat pockets. "Miss Hale." "I didn't open the door," one of them yelled. "For clarification, we simply need a brief signature on something." "Justification." "Yes. Nothing will be signed by me." "Through the door," I said. He laughed as if we were old friends. "Of course." "Of course, no pressure?" "Just easier if we handle this quickly." I said nothing after a moment. Footsteps retreated. When I opened the door, a crack a few minutes later, they were gone, but a folder had been slid onto my welcome mat. Inside, in thick black letters, "This can end now if you sign." That night I called Miss Bennett. My voice shook for the first time since the started. She didn't panic. He just said, "Pack a bag. Go stay with someone. Do not go home tonight." I gathered my basics, laptop documents, the envelope pile, and booked it to Christina's. Her flat was scarcely bigger than my old dorm room. The couch had a sinkhole in the middle, and her dog instantly took over my blanket. It was the safest I'd felt in weeks. I broke down for a whole minute. No words. Just that silent cut deep type of wailing that doesn't require sound to hurt. "They're acting like I'm dangerous," I finally said, voice barely above a whisper. "Like I'm a menace." Christina didn't skip a beat. "No, they're acting like you have power. That's new for them." She prepared tea. I clutched the mug just to feel something warm even though I couldn't drink it. I was still stranded on her couch 2 days later. Miss Bennett's voice changed as she called sharper, tighter. She said I discovered something. As it happens, Kyle Whitmore indeed, that my family was counseled to suppress the will by Kyle from the start. Even worse. A series of internal emails shared by one of his junior colleagues demonstrated that he was aware that the Porsche applications were fake. Kyle took on more than one case. He planned the entire campaign. Before lunch, Miss Bennett complained to the state bar. We had sent the updated paperwork to the district attorney's office before dinner time. Suddenly, the air was different. The stillness was no longer mine. They owned it. Not another letter, no more automobiles. Nora Hale was no longer a defensive player. We made no public announcements. No threats, no disclosures, and no postings. All we did was get ready for the trial. They then tried to buy me off another envelope one last time. This one was sent by courier. It includes a complete release clause, a pre-written apology, and a 6-figure offer. I just needed to sign and act like it never happened. For a long time, I gazed at the paper, remembering the years I had to make ends meet while they collected rent on a property I was unaware I still owned. I recalled all of the holiday dinners when I could choose my chair and all of the texts that were always left unread. "We are currently unable to assist Lucas." Meanwhile, received another safety net wrapped present. Then I remembered the knock on my door. Her file, and I burned the offer literally. For a week, Christina's sink had burned scars on it. Worth it. The DA's office phoned the next morning. The lady stated, "We're proceeding with criminal charges. fraud, forgery, and maybe identity theft. In court, you will be required to verify certain signatures. Yes, I replied. I didn't flinch at all. It is said that the truth is revealed in courtrooms. That's giving. In courtrooms, truth appears in a blazer, sits rigidly in a chair, and waits for someone to believe her before it's too late. Instead of wearing black on the day of the trial, I wore navy, remarked. Too apologetic, not gray but grim. I'm not in mourning. To be heard. I'm here. When I entered, Cal Whitmore was already at the plaintiff's table, a gold watch and a costly haircut. The pocket square is folded perfectly, as if he were trying out for a legal drama in which there is never a loser. He avoided looking at me. Mom did. Only for a moment, she sat next to her father, who appeared to have been without sleep for a week. Emma wasn't present. Lucas was, his face said. He had really signed things illegally, so it was amusing that I didn't sign up for this. I sat next to Miss Bennett, who whispered to me to remain composed while passing me a folder. Let the facts do the talking. She had a glint in her eye and a highlighter behind one ear, which gave me the impression that I might not be the only one experiencing this. The introductory remarks were courteous jabs. Cal portrayed me as a long-separated relative who became re-interested in her late grandfather's property. A lady driven by spite and maybe bewildered by bereavement. I didn't recoil. I simply believed he was good, not being honest. The positive. Then Miss Bennett got up. She didn't speak louder, didn't pace. One by one, she just let the truths sink in. I am explicitly named as the only successor to the property in his will. The falsified power of attorney paperwork. Rent has been going into accounts I was unaware of for years. The unexpected campaign of smears. When I asked, she concluded, this isn't about family tension, it's about sitting down and stealing. There were then testimonies my signature was digitally duplicated and put onto rental papers, the handwriting expert revealed. Then Mrs. Burton. The surprise appeared. Yes, the talkative neighbor whose mistake caused the whole situation was Mrs. Burton. According to her testimony, my grandpa had frequently mentioned that the home was for Nora. Not for me, not for the family, nor for the children. She even brought a Christmas card with the sentence from him addressed to me. I hope you find tranquility in this house someday. I attempted to shake her. Mrs. Burton grinned. Isn't it possible that you misinterpreted? At my age, sir, I made a lot of mistakes. Not one of them was that. A little stillness fell. The stenographer seems impressed as well. I spoke simply when it was my turn to do so. I informed them that I had been under the impression that the house had been sold for years and was unaware that it was still in my name, that I had toiled, worked, and kept silent. Until I was at my breaking point, I refrained from crying. I didn't shout, I just stated the facts as if they were mathematical. When the judge returned after his vacation, he appeared worn out yet determined. The plaintiff. Nora Hale wins the case in court. She regains full possession of the property. All rental money received during the previous 3 years must be returned by the defendants together with interest and legal expenses. I didn't grin. Not quite yet. I simply allowed it to pass over me like a storm at last, after waiting for thunder for years. Cal requested a private conversation for tonight. Dad whispered something, I didn't hear it, as though it owed him something. Lucas gazed at the floor. However, Miss Bennett turned to face me and spoke softly. It's yours now, but it's not over yet. After 2 weeks, the DA brought criminal charges. Dad identity theft, forgery, and real estate fraud. A formal defamation suit was accepted, but Emma was not prosecuted. Additionally, it comes out that Cal Whitmore encourages customers to fabricate paperwork and suppress a legitimate will. Not very good for your license in a bar. His name appeared review of ethics. 2 days later, my parents were dropped by his firm. Word spread. Even though that section was private, Emma's sponsorship began to wane silently with courtesy, similar to people avoiding a fire before it gets out of control. When the story was picked up by a local blog, Mom lost her part-time employment. Customers apparently disliked being assisted by a mom who was accused of scamming her daughter that required an out-of-town warehouse job of some kind. Lucas attempted to return to school, but this time no one is covering his tuition. Me, I took up residence in the house with a key that was finally mine without any fanfare. Nora Hale is now listed in the mailbox. I put a picture on the wall of the hallway one evening. It's not a big deal. Someone snapped this candid photo years ago. Me middle age. The edges are blurry. It's mine even though it's not flawless. Michael assisted with the hanging. He made no inquiry regarding the court. All he did was check that everything was straight. I want help with the garden next weekend, she murmured, kissing my shoulder. In his pocket lies a ring. I am aware of that. He is aware that I am aware. We are not in a hurry. Christina comes by frequently. Every pie he brings burns a bit. Sam forgets there are cups, so he drinks juice from a cereal bowl. Laura brings her dog, who has somehow become more daring when it comes to stealing food. It's a mess out loud. Lovely family is involved. The sort that doesn't urge you to make yourself smaller. People occasionally inquire as to whether I regret not settling rather than simply accepting the money and leaving. And I always say no, because they didn't want the truth. Was intended for me. Long before the courts, they lost their daughter. I recently formally announced it. What do you think then? Did I make the correct decision? For the sake of my family, should I have let it go? Or was it right for me to take it to court? I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about it all. But I am certain of one thing. The wrong individuals are protected by silence. He's come this far. Thank you. Really, additionally, remember to press subscribe if you would want to see more tales like this one.